how does one go from being proactively waiting by the phone to actually proactively helping customers? Like, what is the tip that you can provide to transition someone from basically being a gopher, because that's what we are, like,
Yep.
if we're just waiting by the phone, we're just waiting for someone to tell us to go do something, to someone who's actually leading a sales opportunity?
Of course. I think first of all, what is important to understand is that we shouldn't be looking at things from a sales process point of view, because the sales process is the wrong process for your client, and especially it's not a linear process anymore. So at one point in time, I changed my mind and my perspective and looking at all the things I do from a client's point of view. So instead of having the sales process in mind, I was looking at their customer buying journey and the different objectives they need to accomplish in order to make a purchase decision. So I wasn't that sales process driven anymore and tried to change the perspective. And in, I would say, 8 or 9 out of 10 times, the people I had been dealing with on client side, so my buying champions, they never ever had purchased a similar software before. So it was the very first time they were engaging in such a complicated process and procurement project. And therefore, they really didn't know what to expect and who they needed to talk to, who were the decision makers on client side. But I had been through the same process 50, 60, 100 times with my previous clients. So I was able to map out their buying journey, and I was able to also tell them, like, look, you need to talk to this guy in order to get the go here. You need to involve that stakeholder to get their approval for the whole thing. So because they were kind of lost sometimes, I was able to really anticipate and think 2 steps ahead of where they are in their current process and tell them what to do next. And this, I think, was really important. And most of the time they were really thankful, because I could also not just accelerate my purchase process, but also their buying decision, because they weren't running into any of these obstacles or last minute vetoes. I think this is the important part here.
Yeah, I really can't understate that whole idea of kind of almost reverse engineering that whole process, to really put yourself in the shoes of the buyer. That's just good advice all around, right? Like, even certainly in the sales process, to be able to empathize with the buyer and make them feel as comfortable as possible. But even as in life in general, I went through this exercise one time way back when, I think it was like a conflict resolution training or something like that. And what the trainer had us do was, what was it? So first, we essentially partnered up with somebody and had some fictional scenario take place. So I think it was based on real life, but we had to go through like 3 phases of something, where one was where like you pretend, I think, you're yourself, and then somebody else role plays this other person that you're going to be, I guess, working against. The second scenario was then you then playing the part of the person that you were initially maybe arguing or had a conflict with. So then you could then see their side of things and try to explain from their point of view. But for you to then understand that, because you're the one saying it, was a really cool exercise. And so it really helps you kind of see and put yourself in their shoes more so than maybe just imagining it, I suppose. And so from a buying process, to really kind of put yourself in the head of somebody that you're interacting with and that you're presenting all this information to and value to, is really good to allow somebody to shift a little bit to understand, oh snap, like what I would otherwise be telling myself is useless the way that it's being told right now. Maybe I should shift a little. So yeah, I love everything about that.
Yeah. I don't know what your experience is, but to be fair, my biggest challenge in sales has always been that it took my clients longer and longer to make a purchase decision, if they ever came to the point to make a purchase decision. I mean, I have all those numbers, and you've heard them probably before, that about 1/3 of all purchase attempts in the end ends with no decision at all, because the buying group cannot come to a collective agreement, and therefore you're losing lots of deals, not to your competitors or because of the pricing, but simply because they cannot agree to buy anything. I don't know whether this has also been a challenge that you have been facing, that on the one hand it took them longer and longer to make a decision, if they made one at all. Does it resonate with your experiences, or?
So at least in my experience, it's hard to say, because I just started a relatively new job where that may be the case more often than not. And I'm still pretty new, so I don't have that exposure yet. At my previous company, though, a lot of companies were mandated to buy some sort of a service or software like the one that we were selling based upon regulatory requirements that they had. So there was a sense of urgency there, that was beyond just maybe them wanting something, because they had to comply to be able to sell to certain areas. But I could totally see that being the case, though, where They just, go back to doing whatever they were doing previously just because they can't get that consensus. So I think that's totally valid.
I can comment on that. So in my role there, we have a lot of like good customers who've been with us forever, and they always buy from us. No, like they just buy. It's the new customers that we see this issue with, where they don't know what they want. And when I first started with the role, I didn't really know how to advise them. I just knew how to show them our product. I didn't really highlight what our product can do for them. And I felt like that was my mistake. And then another mistake that I did in terms of not putting myself in my buyer's shoes, my product, my business is the most important thing to me. Like I want to sell my stuff, right? My customer, that's not their primary business. So I assume it's important. Like the mistake that I did was I assumed that them buying from me was just as important for them as me selling to them. And I just took that for granted. It's like, oh, of course they're going to buy. What else are they going to do? Right. And it dawned on me later on, like, oh, there is that do nothing decision where, I can't make a decision between this guy, that guy, or just doing something in-house. Let's just do something in-house and see what happens. We'll patch something up together. And that's mainly because the SE didn't do a really good job. And by the SE, I mean me, of showing them that if you buy from us, you're going to save time, save money, whatever it is that they need to do. But yeah, like I see that quite a bit.